Hello, this is David Mongeau. And I believe we are beginning session 2 of the 2020 ADSA Summit. Thank you for being here. Looking forward very much to this session today, at which we have several speakers who are going to discuss how building data science opportunities through academic partnerships is possible. And as you could see through the abstract, we're really trying to consider how to build these flexible pathways for students while we also advance the individual missions that you're going to hear about from these different universities. Before we go into specific questions about partnerships, we think it's important that you know a bit about the 4 speakers and the institutions they represent, and the data science programs, initiatives, and schools that are all represented. So each one will be speaking to you, telling you about their program, highlighting some of the partnership aspects of that, and then we'll have a Q&A. I'm going to bring up the slides for our first speaker, and then I will ask each of the speakers to introduce themselves when they begin. So I'm going to share my screen. I said this is the toughest part of the entire conference. Here we go.
Yay.
I think you're ready, Kimberly.
I do. I think I'm up. Thank you so much, David. It's my pleasure to be here. I am Kimberly Espy, and I serve as the provost here at the University of Texas at San Antonio. And I'll spend a little time just giving you some brief background about our university. Go ahead. So a couple of quick stats. University of Texas at San Antonio is a diverse, urban serving, community engaged university. We have roughly 34,000 students. This last year, we did about 134 million in total research expenditures. And what we're particularly proud of is the number of students who are first generation, who come from underrepresented groups, who are Pell recipients, and yet who finish on time and ready to go. Go ahead, next slide. We are an Hispanic serving institution, have been so designated since 1994. 1 out of every 2 of our students identify as Hispanic Latino and receive undergraduate degrees. 1 in 3 receive master's, and 1 in 4 receive doctoral degrees. This year we were named by Excelencia in Education as one of the institutions, 1 of 5 across the country, that earned the seal of Excelencia. That means we were certified to be truly serving Hispanic Latino students. Okay, go to the next one. So when we thought about our effort in data sciences, being an urban serving institution, we thought really quite carefully about San Antonio. San Antonio is the 7th largest city in the United States, quite spread out over the geographic area. And we had a lot of key assets relative to considering our effort. You see, we have 2 different locations in our both downtown as well as our main campus that's about 11 miles out. And then we have a number of partner institutions. San Antonio is known as Military City, so we gave careful consideration for our connection with our bases. San Antonio, I believe, is the largest city with the number of bases outside of the DC area. Our goals were to answer the national and regional workforce needs. We were the first school of data science in the state of Texas. Our goal was to drive talent for our tech corridor that I'll talk a little bit more later, and then to drive synergies with our federal agencies, local partners, and our military installations. Go ahead. Our school is one that brings together current programs that are in other colleges. So you see the 5 colleges across the top, in addition to our research centers that come together. Over the past 4 or 5 years, we've had a series of cluster hires across these departments in cybersecurity, data science, AI, quantum, that have really allowed the school, to come together. Okay, go to the next one. These are the degrees that we currently offer in data science and cyber. And really our thrust areas in research are around AI, neuromorphic computing, brain-inspired algorithms, object recognition, health analytics, and deep collaboration with our separate institution, UT Health San Antonio, around medical image segmentation, computational neuroscience. And then we have historic strengths in cloud, reflected in part by rack space and some of the local industry we have here, and then cyber. Okay, go ahead. One of the things we're particularly excited about is that we're bringing together these departments with our school in a new building downtown, on our downtown campus. And you'll see here that we chose this location quite strategically, thinking about our existing campus as well as our area that we call the tech corridor, and strategically placed the school in between. Go ahead. So what we're doing, this is our beautiful new building that goes before our Board of Regents for the design documents coming up next month. It's situated, those of you who have been to San Antonio, right off a chute of the Riverwalk. And will be a 210,000 square foot building that will bring together the faculties that we currently hold. We currently estimate that we serve about 3,500 students. And part of the goal in this building is that we hope to grow our programs to roughly between 7,000 and 9,000 students for our future. Okay, so let's talk about partnerships. UTSA has a historic strengths in cyber, and we really grew our data science effort out of our overall approach to cyber. I talked about the military installations that are here in San Antonio. We are the only non-military university that has all of these designations, CAEs, relative to our operations. NSA has a large operation here as well, and we've been named a national cryptologic partner. And so we really focused on thinking about deeply serving this aspect of our community in data science. So go ahead, next slide. So what we've done is we've built in an adjacent organization to our School of Data Science that we call the National Security Collaboration Center. And it's really meant to be a partnership around government, industry, and university. And what we've done is that we have dedicated space for these different entities to literally provide personnel in our facility. We've built a little baby one on our main campus while we wait to build the beautiful new building that you saw earlier. And what it's allowed us to do is that, we find that, first of all, students want to be in the action and have the opportunities to work on some of the problems of these entities. So by being right next to each other, we can facilitate those efforts. Our faculty learn real time what some of the problems are in this space. And again, by having access, particularly in the secure space, it enables us to understand what those problems are. And then not surprisingly, industry gets access to our students as workforce early on and can kind of jumpstart that cycle of innovation. Okay, next. A good example of how this has worked is our partnership with the Mitre Corporation. Mitre is an FFRDC that runs, I'll just say runs tons of stuff, and particularly in San Antonio. They have a very large presence here. And their goal was to increase their work in cybersecurity, so they were a natural partner with us. And so what we've done is we've focused around building internships, experiential learning. We do some professional education for their employees through online boot camps and other shorter experiences. We've also partnered with them on Generation AI, the Nexus program that builds data science problems into our core curriculum. That's been particularly exciting. And then we've also partnered with them on K through 12 outreach. And why don't you go to the last slide? And so what we've really tried to do is have a deep partnership with Mitre. We've mapped out the different sectors in which we might engage. And so you can see that not only does this benefit us, thinking P through 12 through higher ed, onto them as an employer, and then back to our overall environment. By really thinking about what that ecosystem looks like, we can partner at all these different levels to really drive that kind of deep engagement that serves all. So I think that's where I end, and we'll go to the next. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. And we'll come back with questions. And now, Talitha.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Talitha Washington, and I'm a professor of mathematics at Clark Atlanta University. And I'm also the inaugural director of the Data Science Initiative at the Atlanta University Center. So next slide. The Atlanta University Center is a consortium of 4 historically Black colleges and universities. Clark Atlanta University is co-ed, about 3,500 students, and it's ranked an R2 institution, so research intensive. Morehouse College is all males, and it's a liberal arts college. Morehouse School of Medicine is a graduate only, it's a medical school. And Spelman College is all female, and it's a liberal arts college. So the Data Science Initiative looks to essentially enhance, develop, coordinate programming initiatives across all 4 institutions. As you can imagine, each institution has its, well, obviously has its own president, but they also have their own mission, goals, and values. So one of the things that I'm bringing into the Data Science Initiatives, how can we best develop and support programming that really cuts across all 4 institutions? And we're also seeking to be a hub for other HBCUs, other historically Black colleges and universities, so that we can coordinate and synergize our efforts. Next slide. So historically Black colleges have the potential to produce at large scale African-American data science graduates. As we all know, data scientists are in demand. HBCUs disproportionately graduate a number of Black students with STEM degrees, even though so HBCUs graduate 25% of Black students with STEM degrees, even though HBCUs only enrolled 10% of all Black students, and this is across the higher education landscape. Also, HBCUs are the institution of origin of almost 30% of Black graduates in STEM doctoral programs. So this really, these statistics, I should say that it's data, statistics, really say that HBCUs are well positioned to not only make an impact in the diversification of the field with those who have expertise in data science, but we already are doing it in other STEM degrees, so we can translate this over to the data science arena. Next slide. So the Atlanta University Center, we're located near downtown Atlanta, just southwest of downtown Atlanta. The 4 schools are co-located, so literally we're right across the street from each other, but definitely each school has its own identity. So we're looking to leverage the Atlanta University Center's rich history in social justice, and our initiative aims to increase the number of our graduates with skills in data science. And we really want to focus on developing either research in data science or course modules, course developments in data science around topics that impact Black America. We've all seen what's happening on the news the last year and so on, I'll say. And so the AUC is really well positioned to address some of the perils around ethics and bias in data science, in particular as it impacts Black America. So we were funded last year by a significant grant from the United Health Group, $8.25 million. And so the United Health Group saw our value and said, we want to fund the starting and the building of the program. And so that happened last year, and we've been active ever since. Next slide, please. So the Data Science Initiative at the AUC is a bit unique in that we don't live in an academic institution. We live at the Atlanta University Center Consortium, which facilitates cross-institutional programs and activities. So we live in a nonprofit, so not an academic entity, but we have a strong relationship and close collaborations with the 4 institutions. So our governance structure is that we're governed by a council of chief academic officers, which is the provost of the 4 institutions. And we also have a member of the Atlanta University Center library that helps govern us as well. We also have a faculty advisory board, which is made up of faculty from across the 4 institutions and also the library. So we maintaining communication and making sure that everybody has a place in our data science initiative and facilitating involvement is something that we really take pride in doing. Next slide, please. So I was hired in, I guess, a couple months ago in the middle of August. Before coming here, I was a professor of mathematics at Howard University, and I also did a 3-year rotation at the National Science Foundation. And initially I was over the IU's data science funding program, and I also built and established NSF's first Hispanic Serving Institutions program, and our Work in Convergence Accelerator. All 3 of those activities, I'm leveraging what I learned in all 3 of those. I used around data science, improving undergraduate STEM education around data science. Well, that's what we're doing. Also in building and establishing the Hispanic Serving Institutions program, which, my colleague just said that they're an HSI. And so HSIs are a wide, diverse group of institutions from community colleges to R1s, R2s, are to the nth, we'll say, right? And so really, when we built that program, we really had to think about multi-institutional. So now I live in the AUC, where I have all these different institution types, and I'm building a program that resonates with their mission, goals, and values of each of the institutions, even if they have a different focus. Morehouse School of Medicine is keenly focused on health analytics, bioinformatics. Spelman College is focusing more on the women's and African American. And Morehouse College has a male focus, business focus. Clark Atlanta has a social science focus. So in leveraging the strengths of all those institutions in a thoughtful way, so we can really bring value. So I came in mid-August. We're in the midst of developing a data science minor across 3 institutions that will launch in the fall of 2021. And we also are developing introductory data science courses, both at the undergraduate level and the graduate level. The introductory data science course at the undergraduate level is akin to the Berkeley's Data 8. We also have graduate courses that we're developing, one at Clark Atlanta that's going to be grounded in the social sciences. So it's going to be an interplay between the social sciences and data science. Another one at Morehouse School of Medicine, which is going to focus more on health analytics and also the genomes, right? And we also have a graduate data science fellows, we have graduate fellows from Clark Atlanta and Morehouse School of Medicine. More than 80 AUC faculty have completed data science related training. This is only 1 year. So we've been able to get our faculty excited and really involved, as well as our students and adult learners. Next slide, please. So we have 2 goals with our data science initiative. Our first goal is to develop talent. We really aim to be the largest producer of African Americans with expertise and credentials in data science. And we want to ensure that all of our students in the AUC has access to data science experiences. Our second goal is to create new knowledge. We want to lead national efforts to address race, gender, and social justice aspects of data science. So we're looking to develop data science, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and cybersecurity techniques that address both ethics and bias, with a focus on topics that impact Black America. And again, we're doing this across 4 institutions and also nationally across HBCUs. So it's great to be here.
Thank you, Talitha. Laura, would you like to tell us about your program and partnership at Denison?
Yeah, I'm Laura Boyd, and I'm an associate professor of economics and the current director of the data analytics program at Denison University. Next slide. For those of you who might not know, Denison is a liberal arts college of roughly 2,300 students located in Granville, Ohio, which is about 25 miles east of Columbus. Both facts, the size and the location, have helped our graduates launch successfully. Clearly, being so close to the capital of Ohio has facilitated our graduates launching into data analytics professions, as it is the corporate home of many data-driven companies. In retail, there's L Brands and Abercrombie and Fitch. Insurance, there's Nationwide, Safe Auto, Root, as well as industry giants like Cardinal Health and American Electric Power. The small size to some might seem like a disadvantage. Many firms like to recruit where there's a much larger pool of applicants, but for us, it's been one of the keys to our success. Like many liberal arts colleges, our class sizes for our courses are small, typically less than 25 students across the university, which allows our students to develop these close relationships with each other and professors alike. I know that these relationships are, what many of our graduates look back on and value most about their experience in Denison. And it's because of that, our alumni are incredibly involved with our college. They're always looking for ways to give back. And we, the data analytics program specifically, and Denison University more generally, have really just begun to leverage that. Additionally, by being a small school, our academic programs are more intertwined with institutional offices like university communications, investment, career services, as well as co-curricular programs like what we have here at Denison. It's called the Red Core Lab. RED stands for Research, Engagement, and Design. It's one of Denison's Center of Entrepreneurship, design thinking and innovation that works with professors and classes and fields, teams of students in consulting projects with external companies. Okay, next slide, please. Although the data analytics program is relatively new major at Denison, we graduated our first class in May of 2019. We've been successful in using our alumni in various capacities to help our students. I'm going to provide you a little bit of history of the formation of our program because it will better give you a better understanding of the partnerships we have forged with our alumni. Adam Weinberg became the president in the fall of 2013, and rather than coming in and changing things immediately, he watched and listened to students, faculty, college partners, and alumni. He clearly saw that our alumni are a valuable resource, yet underutilized, and began to make changes. For example, he immediately redesigned our Career Center, enhancing alumni involvement throughout a student's time at Denison. Next slide, please. Additionally, he asked faculty to think creatively about new majors to add to their curriculum. The first and foremost, he wanted us to stay true to our liberal arts mission. But secondly, he wanted to attract a new kind of student. And third, he wanted to help our graduates successfully launch. What is important to note is that he was willing to support these new majors financially in many ways. For us, that included 2 tenure-track faculty lines, as well as an additional administrator as an associate director. But it also became a talking point in the most recent capital campaign. Both university communications as well as institutional investment have highlighted these new majors, including data analytics, and many of the publications to alumni, allies of the university, and the general public. That exposure to alumni and strategic college partners have been invaluable for us. Next slide. A group of faculty across the college who are largely doing quantitative work in their own disciplines came together or in my case, who maintained close ties with former students who were doing quantitatively intensive work in their professions, saw the need for an analytical major in design what is today the data analytics major at Denison. We were a group of faculty from across the college, truly interdisciplinary, that agreed on 3 main goals: not to just repackage courses that currently exist, but rather to design our own courses that reflect the liberal arts, giving our students experience working with data from a myriad of fields. Second, we wanted to give our students practical experience both within the classroom and outside of it. And third, to provide enough technical skills that they would be successful coders if needed in their professions, but also to enhance their capabilities to communicate to both technical data scientists and to professionals within specific fields. That is, our major is truly an interdisciplinary major. Next slide, please. I'm not going to get into the details of the major requirements. I'd be happy to later if anyone has questions. What I'd like to highlight is 2 aspects that have helped our major forge relationships that have helped them launch. First was the DA 301 Proctorman course that's taken during their junior year, in which students work in teams of 4 or 5 with the clients to solve real-world problems working with the client's data. The second is the required internship in the summer between their junior and senior years. So how do we find the clients for 301, and how do the students find these analytical internships? Most are found through our network of alumni. As I mentioned previously, with the university adding new majors, DA was not the only new major we have added since President Weinberg took office. We've received a lot of press and support from other university offices. Just to give you an example, folks that were working with institutional investment in the last capital campaign often met with alumni who were very excited about hearing about the new data analytics major and wanted to contribute in some way to the university. Yet what they found was early and mid-career alumni often don't have the financial capabilities to write large checks that might support something like a named chair or building. But we have found ways for them to contribute. So to answer where we found these clients or internships for our students, it came from the alumni. If not directly, indirectly through someone they might know. We have found that the alumni are more than willing to contribute by providing a database, conducting mock interviews, or judging our datathon contests. Some have even been able to establish dedicated internships within the firm for a Denison student. All of these activities allow alumni to be connected to the college and our program, but more importantly, provides them opportunity to see just how qualified our majors are. We're incredibly thankful for the support that the university has provided us with the growth of, we've grown to over 140 majors today, which is the 5th largest major on campus. And we've been able to add 2 new tenure track lines this fall, bringing us a total of right now 5 faculty with very diverse skills. And it's through this exposure that we see that we're able to exploit what the alumni offer. Thank you.
Thank you. And Nick, will you round out our overview of the 4 schools, and we'll delve deeper into the partnerships afterward.
That'd be great, David. So I'm Nick Horton from Amherst College, and I wanted to talk a little bit today about academic and industry partnerships that have recently grown to include some of the community colleges in our area and also some nonprofit organizations. So next slide, please. So this is not coming in a vacuum. There's been a lot of things happening in Western Massachusetts in recent years. We have a very active 5-college consortium that includes 4 liberal arts colleges and the public R1 University of Massachusetts Amherst. And this was the recipient of the American Statistical Association's Statistical Partnerships in Academia, Industry, and Government in 2019. And that foundation that's really helped to promote the rapid growth of data science in Western Massachusetts over the last 5 years has helped to build some other initiatives, in particular the one I'd like to talk to you about today. Next slide, please. So as I said, there are these 4-year institutions, including the University of Massachusetts. We've recently started partnering with Greenfield, Holyoke, and Springfield Technical Community Colleges. We've already heard a fair amount so far today about some of the exciting things that are happening at the community college level. Pretty much every community college is spinning up some form of data science or data analytics program. And I think it's a big challenge for those of us at 4-year institutions to help provide pathways for those students to kind of successfully navigate their way through. I think that's a kind of a thing that's happening at all 4 of the panelists. We have the benefit as well, as we've heard other panelists have talked about, large employers or other entities. MassMutual has a large presence in the area. They've taken it upon themselves to, as they describe, shower money on data science in the Valley. And that really led to some of the activities of the partnership. Next slide, please. So we built on this existing relationships and put together a 9 institution. Again, complicated, but it's been really effective so far. NSF grant called coming out of the Harnessing Data Revolution Data Science Core. We call this the DSC Wave for Wrangle, Analyze, and Visualize. Next slide, please. So the idea behind this grant is to be developing the kind of workplace ready schools. And again, this builds directly off Laura and others have been talking about. How do we ensure that students have the capability to go out into the workforce, to be able to do the kinds of things we want them to be doing? We know that the coursework is critical to give them a strong computational, statistical, mathematical foundation, and to ensure they have the right domain knowledge and the communication skills to be effective. But we know that the role of internships, the role of capstones, are really critical to kind of refine those skills. I think one of the challenges we have in the academia is staffing and supporting those kinds of initiatives. The DSC Wave is intended to kind of build that by having teams of undergraduates. So these are sophomores who've taken some form of data science course. or maybe early juniors, who will then start working on data science for social good projects in various community organizations. And the goal here is to provide that real world experience that complements what they learn in the classroom. And then when they do their junior or senior level integrative experiences and capstones, they're refining those skills, but they're not starting from scratch at the junior or senior level. Next slide, please. The other component of this is we've started to think about what approaches we can get these teams so they're working fairly autonomously. It's obviously a challenge, as Laura was describing, the kind of getting these projects together, kind of supporting students in various different ways for this requires a lot of staffing and support on our end. So what are approaches that we can use to kind of help these teams to self-organize? We've been using agile analysis techniques developed for software development to really think about how those approaches could help give the students the practice and the skills and techniques that they will, as they move out into the real world, start to collaborate in teams and do these larger projects. Next slide. And then another important part of our initiative, however, is to build capacity at community colleges. As I said earlier, we've had things like the 2-year College Data Science Summit, the Broadening Data Science Education Report that came out of Renata Rawlings-Goss and the South Big Data Hub. There's lots of things happening in this realm at this point, but there still is a need to kind of help institutions create and improve their data science programs. And so part of the grant is really intended to foster faculty development and also to create pathways for students to transfer and also engage with DSC Wave. So as they start setting up their own data science programs, could their students seamlessly transfer in and start in their junior year at UMass or Amherst or Smith or other places to kind of engage in these types of projects? Because we know that's the kind of skills they're going to need to be successful. Next slide. So none of this is easy. And again, I think this is why I'm last, David, is to kind of talk about not just the successes, but how do we kind of deal with some of the barriers. And obviously for partnerships, I think time is the major constraint. It's wonderful if you have a Mass Mutual sharing money, if you have an institution that says, here, Laura, take these 5 new positions and do with them as you will. Oh, and a new building for you. Again, these are the kind of things, there is that leadership out there, but how do we then leverage that so they have the most impact on as many students as possible? There's all kinds of constraints here. We need to be thinking when we hire new faculty, how do we protect them so they're not totally, sucked under in doing all these exciting different things. There's a conflicting need to build connections and engagement from day one for their work. There's often lack of incentives for building partnerships. How do we kind of credit that in various ways? And I think that's what we designed this panel to, is to start to think more about these types of questions and to kind of spark a conversation. So I'm really looking forward to that now, and I'll turn things back over to you, David.
Thank you, Nick, and all the panelists. Very much appreciate the fact that you've introduced different ideas about partnering so that it doesn't, we've heard of models that are regional, leveraging regional strengths. We've heard of schools with common purpose. Very interesting perspective on the importance of alumni and community colleges. So I wondered if we could take a little deeper dive in that. And one of the questions we wanted to consider is, how is your partnering helping you meet both the needs of your students in creating pathways for them, but also the mission of your university? And I wonder, perhaps you would start us off, Kimberly.
Yeah, sure. I'll dive a little bit more into the Mitre partnership. For us as a Hispanic serving institution, where about half of the students are first generation, when you say data science, they don't necessarily know what that means. And so it's been really helpful for us with the partnership with Mitre to introduce our students early on in their core curriculum classes, in their first year academic inquiry class, where they become exposed to these tools and to the power of what these approaches have that then introduce them to this world. And obviously it's not just in computer science, it's in geological sciences, it's in communication, that students who think they have a burgeoning interest but have no idea. And so what Mitre's really, the partnership with Mitre has really allowed us to do is to take advantage of some of those problem sets, to adapt them to those general purpose courses, and to really then drive student interest in a way that then pays it forward relative to using these approaches and getting the taste of what data science can be. So for us as an institution that really is about transforming pathways and to enable students to see a different future for themselves that they hadn't even really realized existed, that partnership has really been truly enabling, that then sets up the classes later on that are more specific, the working in teams, the externships and things that build on that broader base.
Follow-up question, though. So it sounds very effective. How do you leverage the Mitre relationship, and does it scare off other players?
That's an interesting question. So the way that we've tried to leverage that, Mitre is kind of a unique entity being an FFRDC, right? We do run into some challenges. I think I told you that we have multiple military bases, right? And the Air Force has somewhat different requirements than the Army, for example. And one would think, while they're clearly all devoted to our national defense, those interplays sometimes are a little bit more challenging. Mitre being an entity that that essentially runs a bunch of installations is used to operating in that different space. So they've been very ecumenical for us. That's been helpful. But to your point, we do have to pay careful attention, not only to the collaborations with our institution, but how they each collaborate with each other. So who's next to who and how that works has been one of the more delicate things to manage for some of our faculty and some of our directors.
Thank you. Is that something with Mass Mutual you also experience, Nick, where if they have a strong presence, how do you invite others to partner?
Yes and no, to some extent. I think they've been a model in trying to figure out ways that they can be creating spaces for data science and for some of these things to happen. For example, we've been jointly hosting a research in progress session, but everyone's invited to that. It's not like other people are not welcomed, and we do get others from industry and other environments. They've essentially kind of created a neutral ground that's been a place where we can have some of these conversations. Sometimes it's focused on getting different academic institutions, some comprehensives or the community colleges. Sometimes it's focused on trying to reach out to domain experts in different fields that are less technical traditionally, kind of, some growing, computational social science, things of that sort. But I think they've really seen the value of being the kind of the thought leaders and being open to that in various ways. But again, I think it's always complicated as you start to build these, if you do have kind of a very strong partner, and then kind of working to kind of support that and to kind of bring others in as well.
Right. So Talitha, you have some very strong partners too among the universities that have come together in Atlanta. How is the partnership among you helping, and what are some of the major challenges to keeping the partnership focused on those two main goals that you outlined for us?
So there's a partnership between 4 institutions, and it may be a marriage of convenience, but I went to undergrad at Spelman, so I graduated from Spelman. I played in the Morehouse marching band, and a lot of my adult life I did research. I have a close collaborator on the campus of Clark Atlanta, and I've always loved math biology, so the medical school is just natural for me. But the thing is as presidents come and go, the institutions and how they position themselves, it can change the flavor. Right now, the 4 presidents are strongly committed to creating collaborations between the institutions. So the key is creating collaborations. So that's kind of one of my role, is to facilitate this collaboration, making sure that one institution doesn't feel like they're getting more or less. It's almost like my kids in a way, just, to be sensitive to that. So just to give an example, so we're in the process of creating a development program, a development plan. So the question is, well, how do we do that? Well, we do that in concert with the institutions. So I'm going one by one with the development offices at each of the 4 institutions, and to kind of understand how they do it and how they're thinking about it, and then try to formalize, well, what does it look like to have an AUC-wide development plan that really benefits each development office, hits their metrics, whatever they want to do, but then supports the data science AUC-wide. And so, creating that language, that common language across 4 institutions, and making sure that people aren't getting shortchanged, and it's not just something that comes and goes, it's something meaningful and of value. That's an important and critical. So we're doing that. It takes a lot of listening and learning and asking, well, how I have this idea, can you throw some darts at it? Because it's probably a bad idea, so help me make it better. That's kind of usually what I go in with. But it's been a lot of fun collaborating across the institutions, but it is a balancing act to
Yep.
make sure that each institution benefits individually, but also we benefit as a collective.
Right. So Talitha, your comments have made me think of 2 questions, one that I'd like to direct to Laura and one back to Nick. And you mentioned your work with Talitha with advancement and development offices. And Laura, you said that was one of your important relationships for your program, particularly in reaching alumni. Can you say more about that?
Well, obviously, when in development and institutional investment go out and they're trying to solicit some sort of funds, they're always talking to alumni. And so one of the things they were highlighting were these new majors and how exciting it is. And a lot of these former graduates, these graduates will sit back and say, wow, I had a really good experience. I remember this professor or that professor. And it was kind of unique because so many alumni were coming back to us that were forming this new major. And I'm from economics. There were people from psychology. We even have a philosopher on in the program committee. And so these students were coming back and asking, how does data science, I wish I had that option when we were there. And so institutional investment was basically, said, get involved. The faculty would love to have you get involved. And the thing that we've really noticed as an institution is that there are a lot of early and mid-career individuals who really want to get involved, and they think the only way they can get involved is writing a check. And we said, no, there's so many other ways you can get involved. And so we've had, obviously you bring them in as speakers, but we've had them, just share their data and talk about the issues that they had with their data and let us use the data in our courses. Or we've had some come in to be judges of our datathon and just were so totally impressed with our students. We've actually had someone who, I'm not sure where he is now. At one time he was working with Ohio Health, co-teach a class using Tableau. So, I mean, there's so many ways that they can give back. And it was just, going out and telling them, no, you don't have to write a check. You can still support our, university in other ways. And so that's kind of how they've gotten the word out.
Thank you. Before I go to the question I had for Nick, I want to acknowledge some questions that came in the chat. Question for anyone who'd like to step up. How has the pandemic accelerated or hindered your current partnering and or establishing new partnerships?
I'll take a go at that. So, I started and moved in the midst of a pandemic. So I came in, before I left NSF, I found all the newcomers. I said, well, what made your transition easier? And they said, finding people and having regular meetings. But I find that I've been able to find people and have regular meetings across the AUC, but also across the nation. So I've been able to kind of develop more partnerships with people at other institutions and meet with them regularly, so they're a part of the network. So it just doesn't have to, we don't have essentially only a localized effort. We can have a national effort with national impact. So being connected, I think the pandemic has helped us to be connected and to really kind of cross-fertilize with ideas. Hindered, I ended up with the yellow couch, but you know, that's what happens when you do shopping online. But it has helped though in really re-envisioning who are our stakeholders and how can we engage folks both locally and nationally and make those meaningful connections.
How are you doing the meaningful connection? Like you're saying you're connecting, are you doing it this way on Zoom or what?
I'm doing it this way on Zoom. So like with Columbia, we've met with them like every other week for just a quick 30-minute check-in. We've met with other people because we're starting up, and I want to think big. How are people doing it, and how can we position ourselves uniquely? So we reach out to people, and we just have connections and talk with people. How are you doing it? We just do a sharing out, but it's either through reaching out. Sometimes we have regular meetings. Sometimes it's kind of every so often. And I've only been here a couple months, so every so often over a couple months, you take it how you would like. But I find that people are really willing to engage in those discussions. Because when you talk about, I'm thinking about building this, how have you done it? When you have those engagements, the person on the other side, they're sharing what they're doing, but they're also thinking about what and how they're doing it. It helps them reassess, you know, how they're looking at things. So
Yeah.
both of us tend to win on those conversations.
That's great. Any other comments on how the pandemic has helped or hindered?
Well, I do think, you know, one of the things that we try to take advantage of is the San Antonio environment, right? And while students can certainly do this kind of data science work on externships, there is a part of experiential learning. Not being in the physical environment, you do miss something, right? There's part of that maturation and development that comes from being in the crucible of the work environment that's stimulating for students. And it certainly can be reproduced to some degree with Zoom and Teams and things, but it isn't quite the same. And I know many of us are certainly looking forward to the day when we'll be able to both leverage some of the good parts that we've been able to generate from the pandemic, but also, you know, get back to some of those informal interactions that occur from bumping into each other that are really invaluable.
If there aren't other comments about, oh, Nick.
No,
Oh, okay. On the pandemic and its impacts, we have another question, which is about for the types of partnerships that have been formed. What kinds of agreements have you developed to facilitate these, particularly with industry and government, meaning like formal MOUs and so on?
So I have a kind of a side answer, which is that it's been relatively straightforward relative to those kind of MOUs, which I think can often really complicate things. And I think we have horror stories that many of the attendees and the panelists could even be sharing. I think one of the things that's been helpful is in just keeping things as simple as possible, and particularly in terms of trying to kind of build onto that various aspects of you know, kind of capacity building, as opposed to we're going to be trying to solving your problem or kind of starting to get data for which non-disclosures or the like are helpful. It was interesting for me as a member of the National Academy's Data Science Roundtable, had a whole conversation on that from March 2019. I put that in the chat on Attendify, where I think there's a lot of interesting guidance there. There are places like CMU or Stanford that have, you know, full-scale, very expensive programs, which is great that they're able to do that, where they're getting companies to kind of sign up for, I don't know, $30,000, $40,000 a year, many dozens of companies. What I think is going to be really valuable as we scale this to other places that don't necessarily have such deep wallets out there, how we can be thinking about these win-wins. And I think we've already heard some of them engaging the alumni, thinking about ways of building these relationships. And then I think the hard part there is going to be making sure that people see the medium and long-term value. And I know that many people at Mitre see that, and many people at, you know, at your academic institutes, but kind of making that clear what a win-win that is for both those entities and San Antonio. And I think the same thing is true in all these other places. And then trying to kind of find that support so the lawyers don't kind of complicate things.
So maybe then I'll move to something as a precursor to the breakout groups we're going to have. As you're thinking about what's coming up, there may be new resource constraints for all of us as we hit a difficult financial time in our country. So where are you most looking to partner, particularly with other academic institutes? Because think of our audience today doesn't include industry too much or government. So are there particular things you're really looking to partner with some people who may be listening?
Yeah, so as a Hispanic serving institution, 67% of our students are underrepresented minorities. The vast majority of them are Hispanic Latino. We are opening up new pathways for them to pursue graduate study, for example. And that's a great place to partner. Many universities have increased diversity goals, and certainly I think all of us want to increase the broad representation of those who have been historically not included. So universities like UTSA and others, I think, can provide really strong pipelines for graduate study, not only within Texas, but at other institutions. And if we partner and form those collaborations, it's much more seamless for students. Because we find, like many that serve those who are first generation college, that each of those steps takes a little bit more push and nudge and facilitation to get students to see that can be them. And so we certainly welcome, that's a great place relative to workforce development that I think we certainly would be very interested in partnering.
I go next. So we will have an external advisory board, a scientific advisory board, but one of the things that I'm really excited about is to develop a network of HBCUs around data science. So we had our first kind of startup meeting last week to talk about what we can do, how we can do it. But essentially, I want to bring together all the HBCUs around data science to kind of essentially showcase and share what we're doing and how we're doing it in the training of underrepresented students around data science, and really just to tell that story in a unified sort of way. So, because we kind of live in pockets, but I haven't seen that unification. So the idea is to have a collective voice at a national scale around HBCUs. So I think that's an exciting partnership beyond my 4 institutions, but that's also an exciting partnership that I think will be a lot of fun and really will generate some nice results.
Laura, Nick, any particular areas that are ripe for partnering for you?
I think that the kind of questions of diversity and inclusion, that making sure that the next generation of data scientists represent the whole population, and that we don't replicate the issues and challenges and disparities that we've seen in the past is really critical. And I think that we're going to do that in a better way if we partner. And I think we need to be doing that with our municipalities, with our nonprofit organizations, with our companies, with these other institutions. 2 of our 3 community colleges are minority serving institutions, and that's something they're proud of, and they have a lot of wisdom that they've been able to share with us to this point. And I think that's something where I think other aspects of ADSA can be helping to kind of share that, because we need to, we have a responsibility to make sure that we do this right.
Denison has just recently received money and is going to open what is known as a launch lab in downtown Columbus. It's funding that we just received and the president announced just this past fall. And so we're trying to establish a place where we're really kind of focused on the liberal arts being able to help anybody from any college. It's not just for Denison to come to Columbus and interact in the community, which is, Granville is isolated and it's not terribly diverse, but we're trying to get into Columbus where it is much more diverse and tackle some of those issues, but also open it up for other graduates, not students, they don't have to be graduates, that are from other institutions that are similar to Denison. So, I mean, it's indirectly partnering with other institutions through their students again. So that's something that's unique, and it's just on the forefront of what Denison is doing.
That's really interesting. That I'm sure people would like to hear more about that. It's interesting when you say the partnering through students, and you brought up liberal arts. So maybe our last question. Very often, those of us who assemble, we're a little weighted towards the STEM side. And and I even think from my experience in doing fundraising and development, it's many companies and even regional economic development organizations are very focused on STEM too. How do we increase the desire of partnership and funding for data science and the liberal arts? What might you be doing at your university about that? That's for everybody.
That's a good question. And if you guys have the perfect answer, I want to know it.
So for me, part of the answer is what could be more of a liberal art than helping students make sense of the data and the world that they're going to inhabit. And I think the kind of things we've been seeing about making these connections across disciplines that's represented in all these panels, and to kind of really be thinking about what data science for all looks like. There's obviously a lot happening now in high school, this kind of transition with the associate's degree for the first 2 years. And I think those are areas where it's tremendous work needed to be done, but I think there's great opportunities.
So I'm an applied mathematician, kind of classically trained. And my first segue into data science was in a digital humanities laboratory. So I didn't really come into data science through STEM. I actually came into data science through the humanities. Mm-hmm. And I've done workshops at Howard University where they hold them, the psychology department hosts it, right? So faculty there host it. So I've sat alongside psychologists thinking about, well, what is data science? How do we think about it? But obviously it's not from a mathematical spin, it's from a social science spin. Because I was always curious coming in, it's like, well, how do they think about it and how do they think about it? So for me, and to be frank, I actually taught a discussion course in the humanities that had nothing to do with math. It was law and society. So for me personally, I have an affinity for the non-STEM, but I'm also very much grounded in the STEM. So this, for the space of data science where it can just transcend all disciplines and we don't have to have some sort of artificial boundary, is just compelling, and it just kind of pulls me forward. It's like a magnet for my academic brain. So that's actually where I have the most fun. And in the AUC, the presidents, the 4 presidents have stated more than once, and the provosts have stated more than once, that they want data science for all students, and they want all faculty to have opportunities to engage. So that's really where we're going. And we do have faculty development programs for faculty, both in STEM and outside of STEM. And also our aim is to really reach all students across disciplines. So I like it that I can just kind of wiggle in and out of different traditional domain spaces. So it's like, I guess it's a true version of convergence research.
That's great. We're about to close, so I just want to ask if anyone has a closing comment you would like to make. And if not, I thank you all and look forward to seeing people in the breakout sessions after the break. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You.